Chicago Cubs fired manager David Ross. What did they do to Grandpa Rossi? I thought he was their guy. They fired David Ross, and they hired Craig Counsell, making him the highest paid manager in baseball, which Counsell was after. You know, when he started going on his job tour, talking to the Indians the Guardians and the Mets, maybe having some conversations with the Astros. You know, there were a bunch of teams queuing up. The Cubs were queuing up, but nobody knew about it, which is kind of surprising given the way they, pretty good at keeping secrets. But yeah, they. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, I mean, I'm leading off with this because we all just found out about it, and it's kind of stunning because, whether Counsell was going to go to New York, and that the Mets were sort of the great expectation there because he had a chance to reunite with David Stearns. He worked with him and for him in Milwaukee, and they, by all accounts, they got along just fine. But maybe this is just me speculating. Maybe Craig Counsell retained some of the feelings, which were not good feelings, probably a little bit of a residue of bitterness that David Stearns traded Josh Hader at the All-Star, right before the All-Star break in 2022 to the Padres, which just completely turned that clubhouse upside down, made the Brewers players unhappy, demoralized, and they were never really the same. And frankly, that's the only reason why the Cardinals prevailed in the NL Central, because of an act of self-sabotage by the Brewers. So maybe Counsell's like, you know what? Again, me theorizing. I'm not sure I can. I admire David. I like him enough. Enjoyed working with him. I'm not so sure I can trust him. So he goes on to the Cubs. I can only imagine what the reaction is in Milwaukee, because Brewers fans hate the Cubs nearly as much, if not as much, as Cardinals fans hate the Cubs. And it's actually a little more nasty. I think Cardinals and Cubs fans get along really well. It's a fun rivalry. It is not a nasty, embarrassing, punch-outs in the stands type of thing. And I'm not saying it's like that with Milwaukee and the Cubs, but there seems to be more hostility. So this is a huge, huge deal for the NL Central. Because imagine Craig Counsell, who emerged as one of the top 2 or 3 managers in the game and had really impressive success from the context of a guy managing a team in a smaller Midwestern market that was at a annual payroll disadvantage, did not have the spending power, the scope of the spending power, what was realistic or reasonable or real in terms of spending power. The Brewers never had the financial war chest, still don't, the financial war chest that the Cubs have, the Cardinals have. And if Counsell can win under those circumstances, if he can be better than the Cubs and the Cardinals under those circumstances, despite having a built-in disadvantage from the get-go, what do you think he can do now where the Cubs are now back into the, we're going to go for it mode? And the resources that franchise has and is willing to commit. And Counsell wouldn't be going to Chicago unless he was 100% sure they were ready to go all in. Wow, I mean, this is quite an advantage for the Cubs. Not saying they're going to win everything or even win the Central, but if you're a Cubs fan, you got to love this and what it represents. And the other thing to this that I find really, really interesting, should not be ignored, and it certainly should not be ignored by fans of the Cardinals. Do you imagine what kind of appeal or the kind of impact, the kind of attractiveness that this does for the Cubs when they're pursuing free agents? I mean, Counsell is universally respected in the game. He has a lot of juice. I mean, everybody who plays Major League Baseball knows that this guy, if he's not the best, he's one of the best. He's making the most out of a somewhat challenging financial situation. Nobody is better running a bullpen. No one is better running a clubhouse. And no one is better, period, in terms of being resourceful, even when his team in Milwaukee got knocked back by injuries to the starting rotation. He's one of the very few managers that actually makes a huge difference. And he can overcome a lot of obstacles and some injuries and some setbacks. You imagine how this, first of all, the Cubs are an attractive place to go to anyway. But can you imagine the added appeal of Chicago making a bid on a pitcher or a hitter or anyone that they're going to make a bid on in competition with other teams, including the Cardinals, I'm sure, in some instances? Can you imagine the kind of the extra bonus appeal involved now when you choose the Cubs? If the money's right, you choose the Cubs knowing that Craig Counsell's your manager? How many guys, if all things equal financially, how many guys are going to choose Ali Marmol over Craig Counsell? Sorry, I don't mean to be rude. Right? Yeah. You know, and the other thing about this, and I'll move on. We got so much to talk about. We need 7 hours tonight. But anyway, we have 3 guests, and that's good. We'll tell you about it in a minute. And the other thing, isn't this fascinating? Let's contrast the Cubs and the Cardinals for a moment. Let's leave Milwaukee out of it. Cardinals have their worst season since 1990. Worst season since 1990. And the reaction, at least to this point, the reaction is, no, we don't have to shake up the front office. No, we're not firing John Mozeliak. No, we think Ali Marmol is really good. No, he did a great job. He just did a great job. Coaching staff, we like our coach. They work hard. They work so hard. They have their worst season since 1990, and I'm sure they're going to be shuffling some things around with the coaching staff. And there's talk that the former Tampa Bay vice president of baseball operations, who also had the same job at Boston and got sacked in September, Chaim Bloom, according to Peter Gammons, there's talk that he'll be joining he might join the Cardinals in a front office capacity, like an advisor. That would be welcome, because Chaim Bloom has got a tremendous record as far as understanding pitching and identifying pitching and developing pitching and making sure that every farm system he's been with has made that a priority and has done very, very well. And the Red Sox farm system's in much better shape, even though they sacked him because I'm not sure why. Because they want to spend. And this is after they told, when they hired Chaim Bloom, they told him, we want that payroll efficiency. We can't sit here and spend all the time. We need to have an efficient payroll. You were able to do that with Tampa with much less than we have. And so you definitely should be able to do that with us. We're really excited. And then, they turned on him because, what's this, like the 4th or 5th general manager they've had since beginning with the exit of Theo Epstein? They change general managers all the time. So if he joins the Cardinals, and I don't mean to get sidetracked, but it is relevant, I think that would be a really good thing, because they need a new vision, and they need somebody who knows how to cultivate pitching, which is a horrible Cardinals weakness. Anyway, so the Cardinals have their worst season since 1990. And it was really pretty much bad across the board, except when the offense was healthy enough to just maintain a pretty high standard. But a lot of things collapsed. Defense, base running, starting pitching, bullpen, fundamentals in general. And the Cardinals are like, well, no, we believe in our guys. Ollie's really good. Those coaches work hard. We trust Mo. Mo's done a lot of winning. So David Ross has a bad September. This is a guy they hand chose to be the manager, someone they had invested in across the board. Not only just because they thought he would develop into a great manager, he had a history of playing for the team, helping them win a world championship, first since 1908, back in 2016. His leadership, the fact that, he was good in the clubhouse with the players. He had a lot of pluses. But they pretty much had a playoff spot in hand, and they blew it. And so it took them, I'm just going to guess here, as soon as they found out that Craig Counsell was willing to take their job, for the right price, of course. But again, something that important, money should not be an object. But as soon as they found out that they had a chance to actually pull this off, it took them about, let me see, 19 seconds maybe to fire David Ross. Did can you imagine that group up there saying, well, we really like Rossi. We really like Rossi. He's our guy. He's our guy. He works hard. He has a history with us. We can't do this to Rossi. Can you imagine in a million years that those people would say something like that? Now, please contrast that to the situation in St. Louis. And I am sorry to open the show by antagonizing you, because a lot of people already had it up to their eyeballs in terms of frustration over the Cardinals and the way they're doing things. And it's an off season. It's underway. They have a chance to make up some things they've let slide. They have a chance to make an impact. They have a chance to reveal who they are, what they aspire to be, and that they've learned their lesson, and they'll prove it, and they'll show it, and they'll convince us. Okay. Not off to a good start, though. The best manager in your division has now relocated, and better than anybody you've had since La Russa left, has relocated 90 miles or so down the interstate, or up the interstate. Down the interstate from Milwaukee to Chicago. And now he has got this massive treasure of financial power that he can help the front office with in terms of building this roster and filling in needs and coming up with a master plan. He's going to have like 3 times the resources, if not more, to work with now in his new location. So anybody that tries to portray this as something less than a huge blow to what the Cardinals need to do in terms of a setback for what they're aiming to do this offseason. They start off on a pretty kind of slap in the face reality, I guess is the best way to put it. And again, let me be clear. I'm not saying they can't have a great offseason. They can. But you know what? If they try to wiggle and, tap dance, and they try to, kind of take these half-measure steps, and even though it might improve the team, but if they don't do something big, and they don't do a couple of things big and bold and daring that surprise the industry, if they don't do that, it's going to be harder for them to rationalize coming up with something less than big and bold and grand this offseason. Because the Cubs already beat them to the punch. And they haven't even started to spend money yet. You just wait and see how they throw money around. All right. No, I thought this was worth talking about right at the top. I think it's a big deal because the offseason's underway. This is a baseball town. The Cardinals are in the most precarious position they've been in a long time. And maybe the worst, you don't want to start off the offseason with your arch rival that's got this massive amount of money to work with and to spend, and will. They hire the best manager in baseball, at least until the best manager in baseball before Bruce Bochy came out of retirement. Not a fun way to start the offseason if you're the St. Louis Cardinals. Jim Hewer.
I am in agreement with that statement. I woke up this morning, I told you, Bernie, I heard somebody say, I was listening to something, said, well, World Series ended last week, but today starts the off-season in baseball. And we'll see what happens. Craig Counsell's going to make his decision, and we're expected it to be between Milwaukee and the Mets. And I was going, man, I hope he picks the Mets. He gets the heck out of the division, and then, like you said, I got floored just like everybody else. Went, whoa, Chicago, uh-oh, problem. He's not leaving the division. He's going to make somebody else better quickly, and it's going to be an interesting watch to see what happens in this offseason. That Cubs-Cards rivalry, here it comes again, and the Cubs might be the big boy on the block once again. We remember how that went.
Well, they should be. I mean, all the money they spend, they're willing to spend it.
Mm-hmm. And Cardinal fans,
they're also willing to fire a manager that they actually liked and they had invested in and who was part of their history.
Mm-hmm.
It took 5 seconds for them to sack him. Contrast that to the situation here. So, yeah, they're going to be the team to beat in the division. I don't think there's any chance of – I don't think there's any – there's no debate about that. And they're clearly now reestablishing that they're going to reestablish themselves as the power in the division. And the Cardinals have got so much ground to make up because they're starting from such a bad place, and there are legitimate questions in terms of how committed they are to going in big this offseason. See, their definition of big is a hell of a lot different than a lot of people's definition of going big, right?
Yes. It comes also off the news over the weekend when I heard, well, Bellinger's opting out, Stroman's out, and I thought, Bernie, well, the Cubs are going to take a step back now. Nope. They just jumped to the head of the class, and it, like I said, we're going to have a fun time on this show talking about the offseason. It's going to be pretty interesting.
I think they still have a good chance to sign Bellinger. I mean, of course, Scott Boras is going to take him to free agency, but I think Bellinger loved his time in Chicago. We'll see. Stroman, I think that was expected. I don't know if there's any great loss. And the Cubs are going to set their sights on bigger and better starting pitchers if they're going to go there,
Mm-hmm.
So they also did a really good thing, too, because St. Louis and Dan Kantrovitz had a chance to go to a couple different teams, and they offered teams that offered him more money and kind of a bigger title, and he decided to stay in Chicago with the Cubs. And all he's done there is completely renovate and the way that the Cubs scout and draft and develop pitching, and it's in a much better place than it had been for a long time. But I think everybody expects them, in addition to the internal growth with developing, cultivating, pitching, I'm sure everyone expects them also to be a major player in the free agent market. And no one would be surprised to see them throwing down dollar for dollar, bid for bid with the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, whoever else you want to mention, in what will be a frantic auction for Yamamoto, the Japanese pitcher. The Cubs will be right there, front and center, throwing down. Doesn't mean they'll get him, but they're not going to be like, oh, that's a little too much for us. No, they may not get him, but they're going to throw down as much as they think it takes. So, yeah, it's just going to be fascinating. So the Cardinals now have the Cubs to worry about like never before, at least not since the Cubs built that championship team and then never really followed up on it and kind of gradually faded into a soft rebuild. So, anyway.